Don't die just by falling over, Quinn, a boy shouted down the hallway. I kept walking down the corridor, ignoring him. Harassment was a daily occurrence, but that didn't make it any easier to stomach. It bothered me just as much as the first time, and I couldn't help but retaliate. I stopped to push my glasses up. They had slipped down the bridge of my nose again. I desperately needed a new pair. Just looking at them, you could tell they were on their last legs. The sides were wrapped in tape, and they sat crooked on my face no matter what I did. I spun around and shot him the middle finger. I bet you don't even know how many fingers I'm holding up. The boy clenched his fist and charged at me. You level 1 piece of crap. When are you going to learn that you don't belong in this world? He clasped his hands together, and a green ball of light began to coalesce between his palms. When he was only a few meters away, he thrust his hands forward. A beam of green light shot out, aiming straight for my chest. I had nowhere to go. The beam was too fast to dodge. All I could do was grit my teeth and brace for the pain. The light slammed into me, lifting my body into the air and sending me flying backward into the corridor wall. What's going on? A student nearby asked. Are they fighting on the last day of school? A crowd formed immediately, drawn by the commotion. A female student ran over to the damaged section of the wall to check on me. The dust started to settle, revealing my slightly curly black hair. But the moment the air cleared enough for her to see exactly who I was, she flinched. She immediately backed away and turned around, acting as if nothing had happened. As she returned to her friends, I saw them laughing at her. I can't believe you tried to help him. I didn't see who it was, the girl retorted, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. I groaned, standing up and picking my glasses off the floor. One of the arms had snapped off. Again. Damn it. Not again. It was the last day of school. I had hoped that, just this once, they wouldn't try anything. I was sick and tired of it, but I wasn't the type to just roll over, either. I'd seen the people who kept their heads down and tolerated the harassment. Their treatment was far worse than what I got. Fighting back was the only dignity I had left. I didn't bother staying behind like the rest of them. As I walked past, I saw groups talking, laughing, some even crying because they thought they'd never see each other again. I wasn't a part of that world. I didn't want to be. When I finally arrived home, I got straight to work. I lived in a studio apartment provided by the government, just enough space for a single bed and a desk. There was a TV built into the wall, but I only ever used it for background noise. Since I had no living relatives and was only 16, the state covered my housing. A single suitcase sat on top of my bed, containing every worldly possession I owned, neatly packed. I pulled my desk drawer open and took out the book. It was thick, heavy, and bound in black. In the center of the cover was a strange ring with lines radiating outward in all directions. Let's try again today, I muttered, placing the book on the desk. I dug into my bag and pulled out a small test tube filled with clear liquid. Test 112. Hydrochloric acid. Let's see how it goes. I carefully poured the liquid from the tube onto the cover. So far, no reaction. I dumped the rest of the tube out, but the liquid just sat there. Nothing happened. I examined the binding for any signs of damage, but it looked the same as always. Another failure. Why won't you open? Why did Mom and Dad even have this thing? 112 times. That was how many different ways I had tried to open this thing. Not only would it not open, it was indestructible. I tried burning it, cutting it, melting it. Nothing worked. I flopped onto my bed and turned on the TV. I never really paid attention to the content, but the sound of other voices made the apartment feel less empty. It was tuned to the news station. The peace treaty with the Daoki race has lasted for 5 years now, but officials say that tension is rising once again. We must prepare for another war. The news had been non-stop since that day. 30 years ago, the human race received a visit from the Daoki. They looked like us, mostly, except for their dragon-like tails and scaled skin. They demanded our resources and our freedom. Naturally, humanity fought back, only to find that modern technology was useless. Bullets couldn't penetrate Daoki skin, and tanks were jokes compared to their airships. Every able-bodied man and woman was conscripted, including my parents. The war dragged on for years. I grew up never knowing what they looked like. Just when we were on the brink of defeat, a select few came forward, people with special abilities. They shared the secrets of their power to turn the tide, and it worked. But the Daoki were strong. An endless stalemate eventually led to the peace treaty 5 years ago. Of course, greed got the better of humanity. Instead of sharing these powers, high-ranking officials kept the best for themselves. Only those with money could learn the powerful abilities. Everyone else was left with scraps. I was left with nothing when my parents died. The government paid for my accommodation while I was in school, but that was it. When I was 10, an agent appeared at my doorstep and handed me this book. He told me it was the only possession my parents had left to pass down. Why is the world so unfair? I got out of bed and walked back to the desk. Picking up my glasses, I saw that one of the lenses was slightly out of place. I tried to pop it back into the frame. "Come on, just get in," I shouted, pushing down hard. Snap! The lens smashed into pieces. A shard of glass sliced deep into my thumb. Why does the world hate me? I sighed and started cleaning up the glass. I noticed a shard had landed on top of the book. As I reached to remove it, a drop of blood fell from my thumb, landing dead center on the cover. The ring on the cover began to glow. Suddenly, the book lifted itself into the air. What the hell is happening? It shone blindingly bright, shaking uncontrollably. Then, it flew open, pages turning rapidly on their own. I couldn't take my eyes off it. I felt like I was in a trance. The script inside wasn't in any language I had ever seen, yet somehow I could understand it. When the book reached the last page, it began to dissolve, turning to dust right before my eyes. At the same time, my vision started to fade. My body felt heavy, weak. My eyes drifted shut. Just before the darkness took me, I heard a single message. "Congratulations! You have been granted the VA." I couldn't stay awake long enough to hear the final word. Then, everything went black.